I suppose by now it's been maybe a little more than 10 years, but about that long ago, there was an announcement from the Vatican that said, we're considering a new translation of the Our Father. And I immediately said, oh no. I said, come on, guys. It's hardly been a year since I finally stopped saying, and also with your spirit. And to this day, I still have to have the creed in front of me so that I say, in accordance with the scriptures and not in fulfillment of the scriptures. I did that one time during Mass. The whole congregation was like a huge train wreck. And I froze. I was like, I don't know what to do now. We'd stopped right in the middle of the creed, and it took our music director to finally pick up her copy of the creed and get us going again. And so it took me a while of thinking about the possibility of a new translation of the Our Father to see that, well, maybe there is a good motive there. And we're much more familiar with the rendering of the Our Father from Matthew. It's what we use for public prayer, and generally that's what we use in private prayer as well. But it's helpful to have the Lucan version, which we just heard proclaimed, kind of alongside it in our minds because, well, at least for me, it helped to resolve what was for a long time a really puzzling question. Of the 6 petitions in the Our Father, most of them are pretty straightforward, but there's one that really kind of always jumped out at me. I would always ask, I say, why in the world would we ever ask God not to lead us into temptation? I mean, why would God ever do that? And again, Luke's version, Luke's rendering, and Lord, do not subject us to the final test, illuminates the real meaning of that petition. It goes something like this: Lord, do not abandon me to the poverty of my own understanding, to the poverty of my own judgment, to the poverty of my own opinion. And I had wrestled with this for a long time in my spiritual life, even after having been received into full communion with the church. Every day it seemed like I was going to God. I'd say, okay, Lord, here's the plan. And since you're all good and all loving and all powerful, well, then certainly you can make it all work out. And I know that you will because you love me. And a day went by, and then without even realizing it, years went by. And I started to get a little frustrated. I said, Lord, I've been pretty clear in my prayer, and I really am waiting for you to make all of this work out. And it wasn't until a priest friend of mine gave a homily in which she said, God is not waiting for you to tell him the plan. God had the plan in place long before you were ever born. And the only thing that God is waiting on, and therefore the only thing you're waiting on, is to finally have the humility and the wisdom to stop relying again on the poverty of your own understanding and your own judgment and your own desire. Jesus manifests this for us. It has always been the privilege of the second person of the Trinity. It's always been the posture of the Son to stand before the Father and say, Father, I empty myself so that I might receive all that you have and are to the full. Paul, in his letter to the Philippians, puts it in a very similar way. He says, Jesus, taking on human flesh, becoming incarnate, took the form of a slave and emptied himself. And again, for the sole purpose of receiving everything that the Father had and is in store. And so I think what inspired me to think of pre-Advent, because pre-Advent, it's not a canonical period, at least not in the Western Church, not in the Latin Rite, but it's the practice of many of our Eastern brothers and sisters to use that last portion of ordinary time before the end of the liturgical year and the beginning of Advent to begin to prayerfully consider how will the season of Advent be a season not only of penance and of restoration and of renewal and of transformation that God wills it to be. How is it? What will we do during the season of Advent in order to prepare our hearts to receive again the incarnation of the Lord on the solemnity of his birth? And so it's one of the reasons why I got a little fired up this week, because this is the time to begin taking stock of your life, taking stock of your prayer. Stop and think about what when I pray, what am I actually asking the Lord to do? And what is it that, well, if I could pick one thing in my life that grace will accomplish, what would it be? That's how we prepare ourselves for the season of Advent. And so maybe not right away. Again, I don't want to come up out of my stance too quickly here. But then again, at the same time, I think any time is a good time to start thinking about, where am I still clinging on to the poverty of my own judgment, of my own understanding, of my own opinion, my own desire? Where do I have a tendency to come up with my own plan and go to God and say, okay, Lord, in your goodness, make this work for me? Even though to this day, I still think it's a pretty good plan. But I did let it go. And the serenity and the joy that ensued in my life is really beyond description. It's caused me to realize that any good that I might do, any honor that I might accrue, any accomplishment in my life has nothing to do with me, because I have died and Christ now lives within me. And as I rise each day, that's what drives my decisions about the work that I'm going to do, the activities that I'm going to engage in, and the relationships that will compose my life. I feel as though I have been made whole and I have been set free to be fully and authentically what God created me to be. And I want that for you. And I want that for everyone that you love. Understand that it is not a pleasant experience. It's not anything that anyone would ever choose on their own. But again, if your hope is for serenity, if your hope is for peace, if your hope is for joy, that is the first step. To pray in all sincerity, Lord, allow me to let go of all of my personal preference, all of my personal judgment and opinion. Allow me, Lord, to become empty and so receive you to the full. That is the message that we bear to the whole world. Have you noticed? Think about all of the stories that you heard about the world this week. To me, they all seem to carry a clear message of hopelessness, and how many people in the world suffer today because as they look at themselves and as they look at the world around them, they believe they have nothing to look forward to. And one of the effects of grace in our lives, one of the effects of the presence of Christ in our lives is that we come to realize that hope is more than just realizing what we have to look forward to. Hope, real hope, is the realization that we have something to look forward to, and it is worth everything that we have and are today to attain. And that divine hope, again, is what becomes our motive. It's the reason that we put our feet on the floor in the morning. It's the reason why we express adoration for God. Lord, this is why I love you. And this is where I need you, Lord, because the gravity of my own judgment and understanding and desire is still there, still waiting to pull me back to that old life that I am so happy that I have left behind. And so we keep our eyes fixed on our Lord Jesus Christ and ask him, being the good shepherd, to lead us and guide us forward, one step closer, one day closer to intimate union with him. There's so many people in the world today who look at the church and say, there's nothing there for me. Not a person like me. I think those Catholics hate people like me. Jesus was very clear that when we are sent into the world, we are sent to go in search of that person and to look them in the eye and tell them, I recognize that what you see in the church today, you have come by honestly. But the reality is that God has been waiting from the very beginning of time to meet you and to look into your eyes and to see into your heart, to relieve you of the anxiety and the regret and the shame and the hopelessness that seems to overwhelm you. And if you will come here to this place with a sincere heart, he, not Father Mike, not anybody else here, Jesus will set you free. And I promise you, every time you come here, you will have a personal, intimate, life-giving, and life-transforming encounter with him.